The narratives presented herein are provided for purely recreational purposes. I am a 35-year-old, my wife is 34, and I am 35. We first met at university and it was love at first sight. Interestingly, we did not cross paths until our final year, when we were in the same thesis group. Despite having originated from different states, we both fell in love with the city in which our respective universities were located and decided to remain there after graduation. We deliberately postponed cohabitation to avoid placing undue pressure on our relationship. We continued dating for approximately a year following graduation and then decided it was time to live together. I never once questioned the stability of our relationship. I was certain she was the person I wanted to marry and had plans to do so. The question was posed to us at the age of 25, and it took some of our friends from school by surprise. Some individuals expressed skepticism about the longevity of our relationship, but they never provided a rationale for their doubts. It is possible that our contrasting personalities were a contributing factor. I was the more reserved, introverted type, while she was outgoing and occasionally exhibited a more extroverted demeanor. She possessed a compelling, magnetic quality. Drew was a highly sociable individual, which was one of the aspects of her personality that I found particularly appealing. Fast forward to the present, and we had spent 12 years together, during which time we had 3 children, purchased a beautiful home, and even begun planning for retirement. We had even considered relocating to a small town in Vermont. Unfortunately, my wife made the decision to abandon all of these plans. She held a senior position in marketing, which entailed extensive travel, particularly in the context of managing overseas clients. I had always considered our marriage to be robust and therefore did not anticipate any issues when she undertook business trips. I was aware that she enjoyed sightseeing and had established connections in various countries, yet I did not anticipate that she would engage in infidelity until I discovered a pregnancy test in her bathroom while she was away. Following the birth of our 3rd child, we reached a decision to conclude our family expansion. We proceeded to investigate potential avenues for preventing further pregnancies and determined that the most cost-effective and least intrusive approach was for me to undergo a vasectomy. I proceeded with the procedure. Subsequently, my wife ceased taking birth control, and everything appeared to be proceeding smoothly. However, my suspicions were aroused when I discovered a pregnancy test in the trash while cleaning my bathroom. In retrospect, my wife had exhibited signs of morning sickness. However, the presence of the test indicated that she could still potentially become pregnant, and I was not the source of the pregnancy. At the time I discovered the test, my wife was traveling abroad, and there was a significant time difference between us. She had informed me that she was going to bed when we last spoke at approximately 4 a.m. I took the liberty of checking her location using my iPhone and discovered that she was not at her hotel but at a restaurant in Stockholm. Had she wished to go out to dinner with a friend, she could have informed me, and I would have been amenable to the arrangement. Instead, she chose to mislead me about her whereabouts, which caused me to my suspicions were aroused by these doubts, and I entered my wife's office to access her computer. Fortunately for me, she had written down her login credentials inside her notebook. I began searching through her emails in the hope of finding evidence of an affair. My suspicions were confirmed when I discovered emails indicating that she was having a romantic relationship with a client. A romantic relationship was evident between the client and the wife, who had gone on a work trip to meet him. The emails included pictures and updates about their lives, and the message chain stretched back 3 years, possibly even further. They shared details about their families and future plans. Some messages were friendly, while others were explicitly intimate. Upon further investigation, it was revealed that the man was a client, but it was also discovered that the wife had met him while studying abroad in college and that they had remained in contact ever since. It seemed that both of them continued with their regular lives, including their families. Despite maintaining separate careers and personal lives, they would frequently meet in person for intimate encounters. Throughout the night, I conducted an exhaustive investigation into their history, attempting to discern the truth. The revelation was profoundly distressing. I had loved my wife unconditionally and was devastated to discover that she had concealed such a significant secret from me for so long. From the outset of our relationship, I had the distinct impression that I was not truly acquainted with the person I had married. I was acutely aware that I could not continue in a relationship with someone who had been so deceitful. Consequently, I promptly contacted a divorce attorney and provided them with all the relevant documentation, accompanied by screenshots from my wife's computer. In the course of my investigation, I made a series of startling discoveries pertaining to the business dealings of my wife and her romantic partner. I felt it was important to bring these matters to the attention of her employer. It subsequently became apparent that her overseas work trips were not as necessary as she had claimed. In fact, she had been creating fictitious expenses for these trips and charging them to the company. Furthermore, there were private conversations between her and the other men where they planned their rendezvous and devised plausible excuses for work. This additional layer of deceit reinforced my initial suspicions. Instead of confronting my wife immediately, I decided to wait until she returned home. However, when she sent me a text message before her 13-hour flight, I was compelled to take action. On the return flight of approximately 1 hour, I conceived of a plan to reveal the entirety of the information I had discovered to my wife while she remained unaware of it. I contacted her boss and shared the evidence with him, who was taken aback by the information and stated that he would speak to others to gather more details. Meanwhile, I packed a few bags for myself and my children and went to stay at my mother's house. We did not wish to be present when my wife returned home later that day. I put my children to bed and eagerly awaited my wife's phone calls as she came to realize the gravity of the situation. At midnight, I received numerous text messages and calls from her, requesting that we speak. She inquired about our whereabouts with the children, to which I responded that I was filing for divorce and that the children were safe with me and their grandmother. She subsequently arrived at the house, demanding to see the children while they were asleep, which caused a disturbance. I showed her the children to confirm that they were unharmed and then requested that she leave. I advised her to consult with a divorce attorney and to prepare for the forthcoming proceedings. She then proceeded to argue that I had no right to invade her personal space in such a manner and even threatened to sue me. While I was unsure as to the strength of her case, I nevertheless decided to discuss the matter with my divorce attorney, just in case. Interestingly, a similar situation seemed to have occurred with her affair partner, who was overseas. I duly reported the misuse of company time and funds to his employer, despite not knowing them personally. I then began following his wife on social media in order to ascertain whether there were any updates. Eventually, I initiated divorce proceedings, which my wife contested. However, there were no grounds for her to take legal action against me. In addition to our divorce, her former employer filed an embezzlement case against her for misusing company funds. She is likely to face a substantial fine, but imprisonment is unlikely. Interestingly, the embezzlement case was advantageous in the custody hearing. I am now living a contented life without her, although it was initially painful and required significant adjustment. I had assumed that the woman I married would never have treated me in the way she did. I am grateful that I was able to discover her true nature and leave her when I had the chance. My wife and I were married for 8 years and we had 2 children together. I loved her deeply and would have done anything to keep our family together. However, she ended up destroying it all. We initially connected through a dating app and quickly began dating. Our connection was instant and it felt like we were meant to be together. The situation became more serious when my wife became pregnant with our first child. I believe that the news about the pregnancy accelerated the pace of our relationship, but neither of us was opposed to this development. We were delighted and deeply in love. My wife gave birth to our lovely daughter, and our happiness knew no bounds. We got married after our daughter was born and soon settled into a nice house. The order of things might have seemed a bit unconventional, but it all worked out in the end, or so I thought. The initial years of our marriage were somewhat turbulent. We hadn't known each other for very long before she became pregnant, and we were already living together at the time, which highlighted the differences in our personalities. I have always been outgoing and extroverted, eager to seize every opportunity and embrace life. My wife, on the other hand, was more reserved and enjoyed relaxation. We did have occasional arguments, but we always managed to resolve them amicably and move forward. Prior to a pregnancy, my wife and I had been living together for some time. Our proximity to one another highlighted the differences in our personalities. I have always been outgoing and extroverted, eager to seize every opportunity and embrace life. My wife, on the other hand, was more reserved and enjoyed relaxation. There were occasions when I felt my energy level was too high for her. However, we did have occasional arguments, but we always managed to resolve them amicably and move forward. I believe that open communication was one of our strengths, included the ability to resolve conflicts through open communication. When an argument could not be immediately resolved, my wife would spend the night at her sister's house to vent and process her emotions. This allowed us to have a calm discussion the following morning. However, the intensity of these feelings was amplified with the birth of our second child. While I adore my son, he was a challenging newborn, staying awake and crying all night. It often took hours to get him to sleep. During the initial month, the entire household was afflicted with sleep deprivation and a general sense of unease. It is not my intention to perpetuate a stereotype or portray our situation as unhealthy, but I must acknowledge that my wife remained at home to care for the children while I worked approximately 70 hours per week. When our son was crying at night, I frequently attempted to obtain as much rest as possible to ensure my ability to fulfill my work responsibilities. I had assumed that my wife would assume the majority of child-rearing duties. Several months had elapsed since the incident involving my son was crying at night, and I was unaware that this was still a significant source of distress for my wife. It transpired that she was holding a grudge, which I was previously unaware of. One evening, we engaged in a minor disagreement, during which she raised the issue of my perceived neglect as a father and partner, citing my absence during our son's late-night crying episodes. I attempted to clarify my perspective, emphasizing the necessity of my work and the resulting exhaustion. I attempted to elucidate my perspective, emphasizing my frequent assistance with our daughter. However, she remained unresponsive, leading to a state of heightened distress. Eventually, she departed abruptly, leaving me to care for both children. I managed to cope with the situation and awaited her return the following morning, when we would discuss the matter. However, she returned at a later hour than usual, which further exacerbated my frustration. I had to take a day off work due to this incident. It appeared that she demonstrated a lack of consideration for my time and the impact of her actions on me. We discussed the matter at noon when she returned home, and she exhibited unusual contrition. It appeared that she was reluctant to engage in constructive dialogue and was content to acquiesce to my perspective and conclude the dispute. Following the discussion, she interacted with the children in a manner that differed from her previous conduct. Over the subsequent months, she exhibited a noticeable shift in behavior, displaying a renewed sense of vitality. I was unable to ascertain the cause of this transformation. Previously, she would visit her sister once or twice a week, however, during that period, she was going almost every other day. At the time, I did not consider this noteworthy, but in retrospect, I have come to understand the reason behind her visits. On some occasions, she took the children, while on others, she requested that I watch them so that she could go alone. I eventually learned the truth when I observed her exit the bed one night to answer a phone call. It appeared that she had forgotten to put her phone on silent. The ringing of the telephone woke me up. My wife answered the call before I could ask what was going on and whispered to the person on the other end to hold on before sneaking away from me. This struck me as odd right away. It was unusual for her to receive a call in the middle of the night, let alone answer it and sneak away. I stayed still, pretending not to notice, and waited for her to leave the room. After a minute, I cautiously left the room to investigate. I heard sounds coming from the laundry room, so I pressed my ear against the door to try and eavesdrop. I proceeded to the laundry room and pressed my ear against the door in an attempt to eavesdrop. I could discern the voice of an individual on speakerphone instructing my wife to engage in explicit acts with herself. It was evident that my wife was deriving pleasure from this act. My wife had clandestinely departed the premises to engage in phone intimacy with someone else. I listened for several minutes while the act continued. The individual on the other end was speaking in hushed tones, indicating that they were engaged in illicit activities. I contemplated barging in and confronting them. However, I opted for a different approach and returned to the bedroom, feigning sleep. My wife did not return for approximately half an hour, during which I remained awake, waiting for her snores to confirm that she was asleep. I then quietly left the bed and took her phone to the kitchen, where I checked her recent calls. I recognized the name and realized that it was her sister's boyfriend. My wife's sister had been dating this man for 5 years and considered him to be the one she wanted to marry and have a family with. The discovery that my wife was cheating on me was already painful, but the fact that it was with her sister's boyfriend made it significantly worse. I was initially in disbelief, but upon reviewing their text messages, I saw clear evidence of secret rendezvous, including exchanging pictures and videos. What enraged me even more was when I found messages of my wife saying she had to bring our kids along with her. I was furious and I was resolved to expose her actions and took numerous screenshots and saved videos, which I then sent to myself. I returned her phone to its place and retired to the living room. I was unable to bear her proximity. The following day, I called in sick to work and searched online for a divorce attorney. I located one and arranged an immediate meeting with them to end our marriage. Additionally, I felt compelled to inform her sister of the situation before my wife had the opportunity to misrepresent it. I proceeded to drive to the restaurant where her sister was employed and waited until her shift had concluded. Upon observing her in the parking lot, I inquired as to whether we could engage in a conversation. She appeared to be somewhat perplexed and apprehensive, yet she consented to join me in my vehicle. At that juncture, I divulged the entirety of the information I had at my disposal. I presented her with the extent of the material I had amassed in the form of videos and screenshots, which caused her profound distress. Her sister, the individual she had placed unwavering trust in, had betrayed that trust. As a consequence, she was rendered utterly devastated. Once she had regained her composure, I inquired as to her intentions. She promptly resolved to evict her boyfriend from her residence. As she elaborated on the situation, her displeasure became evident. I subsequently discerned that he was not gainfully employed and did not contribute to the rent. He was, in essence, a financially inept SoundCloud rapper devoid of talent. I ultimately accompanied her to her residence and remained with her while she terminated her relationship with her boyfriend, evicted him from her domicile, and discarded his belongings. She proceeded to berate her boyfriend, who seemed to be attempting to confront me physically. However, he did not make any physical contact. Had he done so, I would have probably restrained him and taken him to the hospital. Once the situation had been resolved, she and I returned to my house, where we confronted my wife. My wife attempted to defend herself, claiming that the videos were fake and that I was attempting to ruin her reputation. I was perplexed as to why I would want to do that. Her arguments were not logical, and I informed her that she needed to leave the house because I was resolute in my decision to proceed with the divorce. She began to weep and implored me to forgive her, stating that she had nowhere else to go. She informed her sister that the incident had occurred in a single day when she was distressed with me. She attempted to shift the blame to her boyfriend, claiming that he had exploited her vulnerability and attempted to seduce her. While his actions may have been unscrupulous, they did not justify her actions. Had he made an advance, she could have rejected him and informed me and her sister. Subsequently, she engaged in sexual intercourse with him, continuing the affair for several months. I have initiated divorce proceedings against my wife and obtained full custody of our children. The pivotal factor in the custody decision was her involvement of the children in her affair. The judge was highly critical of this, and her sister has severed all contact with her. They no longer communicate with each other, and according to her sister, many of their family members have also ceased communication with my wife. However, I still maintain regular contact with her. My sister is my children's aunt and has a genuine affection for them. I was reluctant to sever this connection, but I believe it was for the best. I am grateful that I was able to gain insight into my wife's true nature and recognize that our relationship was not meant to last. We are both moving on from it, and I do wish the ending could have been different, but I believe that everything unfolds for a reason, even if the journey here was more challenging than I had hoped. Story 3. I have been in a 4. The relationship has endured for a period of approximately 1 year, during which time it has experienced a number of challenges and difficulties. There have been instances of significant conflict, and it appears that the underlying issues have remained unresolved. Instead, they have been effectively ignored. Following the completion of a single session of couples counseling, it became evident that a loss of trust had occurred. This was precipitated by the discovery of a lie told during a business trip, which was followed by the suspicion that infidelity may have occurred. The individual in question ended up consuming a considerable quantity of alcohol and subsequently became intoxicated to the point of being unable to return home. They then proceeded to spend the night at the hotel room of a friend. The time is 10 a.m. From 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Following a boisterous gathering at a congress in Miami, I discovered, through an unwarranted perusal of her mobile phone, that she had been unfaithful. This was an ill-considered and regrettable action on my part. I decided to extend her the benefit of the doubt, pardon her, and attempt to move forward. I spent the following year attempting to rebuild my trust and manage my emotions within the relationship. She is now discussing another business trip, which indicates that she is indifferent to my feelings regarding the situation. I have requested an explanation. I requested reassurance, but she was unable to guarantee that she would not consume alcohol during the Congress. She accused me of being controlling, but I have come to understand through therapy that these are my personal boundaries and not an attempt to control her. During couple counseling, we both agreed that any sexual activity that occurred in the hotel room was considered cheating and was therefore inappropriate. She comprehends my standpoint logically but struggles to empathize with my emotions. She insists that she did nothing wrong. The man and simply wished to take an Uber after becoming somewhat sober. During my individual therapy, I have learned that she may be gaslighting me and influencing my decisions based on my feelings over the past few months. She has been emotionally and physically distant, and even before our disagreement, our relationship was not optimal. Fortunately, I have a supportive family. During the holiday season, she is currently on a trip and will be back tomorrow evening. I am currently experiencing a dilemma regarding the optimal course of action. On the one hand, I am inclined to pursue further couples counseling, with the aim of resolving the issues that have arisen in our relationship. However, I am also contemplating the possibility of ending the relationship. I have formed a strong emotional attachment to my partner, and the prospect of a separation is a daunting one, particularly given my history of struggles with rejection and breakups. In light of these considerations, I have decided to take the initiative and initiate the separation. I am currently in the process of finding a new place to live. I would appreciate any positive thoughts or messages that could provide encouragement and support during this challenging period. Vibes and hopes for a brighter future. It is beneficial for individuals to have a reliable source of support from time to time. I have recently separated from my wife, who was unfaithful to me, and she has now moved out. I have experienced some unusual circumstances. For context, I will explain further. Last week, my partner and I mutually agreed to terminate our relationship. I took the initiative and spoke with her. Since that time, we have been residing together in a civil manner while separated. However, she has recently proposed that we should have a farewell gathering over wine and celebrate our relationship one last time. Initially, I was reluctant to agree, but after further discussion, I consented. The gathering lasted all night, during which we expressed our eternal love for each other and made promises to work on our relationship. In hindsight, I recognize that I made a significant error in judgment in my marriage. The following day, I was perplexed and suffering from a hangover at work, unsure of how to proceed. Upon returning home, I sought clarity on our situation and an opportunity to discuss the events of the previous night. However, she was evasive, avoiding any conversation and even taking a nap to avoid contact. When she eventually woke up, I had to ask, "What are we now?" Her response was cold and distant. The most straightforward response was that we had discussed the matter previously. In light of the circumstances, it would have been prudent to exercise greater discernment. In the aftermath of last night's events, it became evident that the situation had been influenced by the effects of alcohol. It is evident that a lack of forethought was exercised. Following a period of introspection, it became clear that the past few days had unfolded in a manner that was not in alignment with my expectations. Through discussions with other individuals, it became apparent that I had allowed my emotions to cloud my judgment once again. In doing so, I had compromised my feelings and vows of love for someone who is driven by a need for external validation and admiration. This behavior could be perceived as narcissistic. It became evident that she had sensed my growing distance and had subsequently regained control through the use of closeness and manipulation. I have decided to continue residing with this individual until at least January 7th, when we will relinquish our shared apartment. I have reached the conclusion that this person's presence in my life is no longer conducive to my well-being. They have developed a capacity to influence my thoughts and actions, and I am compelled to safeguard my interests. Consequently, I have initiated a process of limiting my interactions with them. Upon returning home from work, I proceeded to inform her of my decision to limit our future interactions. I then proceeded to elucidate the reasons behind this decision, outlining the ways in which I felt used, abandoned, and lied to. I then stood up and made it clear that I did not believe her story. I even mentioned that I would share the information with her supposed affair partner. My wife followed me and began issuing threats. She threatened to report me to the police and even threatened to inform our social circle that I was mentally unstable. She also referenced my bipolar disorder and warned of dire consequences should I send anything to her alleged affair partner's wife. In response, I calmly informed her that I had recorded her threats on my cell phone and showed her the evidence. She then ceased any further escalation. I sent the message to the man's wife, which contained only dates, times, and facts that could be confirmed through Google Maps, Uber, and messaging apps. I informed her of these facts. I informed her of the facts I was aware of, such as the assertion that they had spent one night together on a business trip. However, I made it clear that I had no proof that they had a close relationship. At no point did the conversation become a shouting match, and there was no physical contact. Therefore, I believe I am safe from any retaliation from her. However, an unexpected turn of events occurred. The woman in question finally departed from the residence of the man in question today, and her brother arrived to escort her away. She is no longer present, and I feel as though I have broken free from her influence. Do you believe that I went too far, merely to be safe? I have also obtained a police report regarding her threats. I will summarize the relevant details for you. I had a 6-month relationship with a man named John, who is now my former romantic partner. We initially knew each other because his mother was my manager at a care home, so we were friendly, but not particularly close. At one point, his mother even attempted to set us up, but he was in a relationship with someone else for approximately 2 years, so we did not interact much. I had been in a relationship with a man named John for approximately 1 month. We initially became acquainted through his mother, who was my supervisor at a care facility. Despite our professional relationship, we did not have a close personal connection. At one point, his mother attempted to facilitate a romantic encounter between us, but John was already involved with another individual for approximately 2 years. Consequently, we did not interact frequently. During that period, earlier this year, John terminated his relationship with his then-girlfriend. I was employed as a dog walker at the time, and he owned a dog. He sent me a message requesting recommendations for places to walk his dog in our town. I replied, and we arranged to go for a walk with the dog 2 weeks later. He then proceeded to share the entire story about the ex-partner's behavior was toxic. She had been unfaithful to him and had engaged in other unreasonable actions, such as locking him out of the house or forcing him to sleep in the spare room because of his snoring. Upon hearing about these experiences, I offered my support and apologized for not being more present for him during his previous relationship. We then began talking and subsequently dating, and eventually, the relationship flourished for several months. He met my family, but I had not yet met his, which should have raised a red flag, but I failed to recognize the significance of this omission. He frequently attended work parties, which involved excessive alcohol consumption and revelry. I attended one such gathering. He consistently advised against posting anything on social media. I was advised by my partner to avoid posting anything on social media about our relationship, as his ex-partner could potentially see it and cause trouble for both of us. I initially believed him, as he seemed kind and loving, and I had no reason to doubt him. However, I subsequently posted a blurry picture from one of the field parties without realizing the potential consequences. The preceding events will become clear in due course. Let us now turn to the subsequent sequence of events. We resolved to undertake a joint excursion to Wales. He proposed utilizing a discount offered by a particular website, and we proceeded to negotiate the finer details, including the accommodation. He proceeded to make the reservation, sharing the location, time, and date with me when I was otherwise engaged. Both parties were anticipating the trip, but on the day prior to its scheduled departure, the other individual revealed that the accommodation had been double-booked, resulting in the cancellation of the planned excursion. Upon requesting to view the email confirmation, the other individual was unable to locate it, a fact that prompted my suspicion that the information was not entirely accurate. Consequently, we opted to alter our plans and instead embark on a journey to Cornwall, where we would reside in a caravan. His family's caravan was of a lesser quality than the original accommodation, but we made the best of it during our trip. He took several calls outside the caravan, often stating that they were from work or a work colleague. Given that he was a manager, I did not think too much of it, assuming it was business-related. On occasion, he would go to a spare room. He chose to watch movies on his mobile phone instead of spending time with me, which initially felt strange, but I was reluctant to disrupt the trip by discussing the issue on our final day. During our evening excursion, he was frequently engaged with his mobile phone, while I was occupied with a dog and my own beverages. As he was about to terminate his phone session, I observed the name of his former partner at the top of his contact list. His contact list displayed a recently sent message to her, accompanied by a heart icon. While this appeared juvenile, I refrained from commenting at the time, as I was reluctant to jeopardize my situation in Cornwall if the situation escalated. Instead, I sought counsel from my friends via text message and requested their advice. The majority of them advised me to confront the issue. I did not feel comfortable confronting him while I was so far from home. The following day, we returned home, said our goodbyes, and he went back to his house. The situation has become increasingly confusing, and I am unsure of what transpired during our getaway, particularly in light of the negative comments he made. In regard to his former partner, he indicated that he had blocked her and had no intention of communicating with her again. Consequently, I contacted one of his former partners from secondary school to inquire about their relationship. I had the impression that he was being untruthful and potentially engaging in infidelity with my most recent contact with his former partner corroborated my suspicions and informed me that he had also been unfaithful to her. I now regret not establishing this information sooner or even contacting her to gain further insight. However, there is an unexpected development. My former secondary school acquaintance is aware that his recent partner, whom we shall refer to as Molly, also contacted me. Given that my high school friend had informed her about my relationship with John, she was keen to learn more about our history together. Despite my reservations, I began typing out a response before realizing that I had not yet considered the implications of everything I had heard about her. However, before I could send my reply, Molly sent me a picture of two. I was taken aback by the positive pregnancy tests, and I immediately sent a message to JN. I inquired whether he had been in contact with Molly recently. He asserted that he had not, but I then highlighted that I had seen her name on his phone. He offered an excuse, stating that he had wanted to see the dogs they used to share and that she had. I inquired further, asking why he had initially lied and why he had only admitted the truth after being caught. He did not respond, so I resumed my conversation with Molly. It transpired that they had broken up, but they had continued to see each other throughout our 6-month relationship. During the course of their 6-month relationship, there was not a single week when he did not visit her place at least 3 times. This occurred despite the fact that he was in a relationship with me. I was extremely angry, particularly after discovering that she was pregnant and that he had been aware of this for some time. I felt compelled to send him a message indicating my belief that he would make a good father. He eventually responded to my bait, inquiring as to how I had obtained this information. He demanded that I cease communicating with Molly and asserted that I should place my trust in him rather than her. Meanwhile, Molly had contacted me to inform me that she was 6 weeks pregnant. She revealed that he had been engaging in sexual intercourse with her on a regular basis, staying at her residence on most nights and even visiting during his work breaks if he was occupied on a given night. This was occurring while he was supposedly preoccupied with me. One might be forgiven for questioning the veracity of this account, given the implausibility of the situation. However, there is a further twist in the tale. While he is engaged in the act of persuasion, he reveals that his former partner has seen messages on his phone from me. These are the innocuous messages about dog walking routes that one sends to friends. This resulted in a significant dispute between them, and subsequently, she developed suspicions about me. It is understandable that she would have these concerns, given the circumstances. If we were merely friends, it is unclear why she would be so concerned. She revealed further details, including that he had uninvited her from a work-related event. A third party, whom I had previously mentioned, informed me that she had already been made aware of the situation due to having seen a photograph on Instagram. As a result, a further argument ensued between the two of them that same evening. However, the most disturbing aspect of this incident was the discovery that the individual in question had been reassuring the third party by making a series of derogatory and untruthful statements about me. He proceeded to relay a series of disparaging remarks about me, including accusations of obesity, lack of attractiveness, and outright ugliness. This was despite his overtures towards me. It is difficult to comprehend the audacity of this individual. However, there is more. She revealed that she had contacted me several weeks ago, inquiring about me and JN. I had deleted the message, assuming it to be a hoax. I have been making a mistake. I deeply regret not retaining the message she sent me. Furthermore, she presented me with video evidence of him mistreating her. I am referring to instances of him physically abusing their dogs, throwing one of them across the room, and forcibly slamming her to the floor. She had installed hidden cameras to document these incidents as evidence should she require it. However, there is more. It is noteworthy that during our trip, he made numerous calls which she subsequently received. It subsequently emerged that I never had the opportunity to meet his family, as he had not informed them of our relationship. Additionally, it is important to recall the trip to Wales, where he mentioned a holiday in Cornwall which was originally intended for him and Molly. This information is highly surprising. Consequently, it is crucial to highlight that when he cancelled the holiday with her, he spun a tale about taking his cousin because she was going through a rough patch, which was a series of lies. I decided to drop John a few final messages to let him know that she had revealed everything. He was silent for a while, then sent a message that was so long that I did not even bother to read it. I simply bid him farewell and wished him a pleasant life. I have not exchanged a word with him since, nor has she. I should note that she had to move to a new place because he began to stalk her. He sent her letters in which he begged for forgiveness and apologized profusely. It transpired that I was merely a secondary romantic interest for a man who he was also involved with a pregnant girlfriend with whom he was still in regular contact. This was a significant discovery. On our way to Cornwall, he informed us that he was delayed due to traffic and attempting to resolve an oil issue with his vehicle. However, it subsequently emerged that he was actually in bed with Molly, discussing his feelings. It is evident that he expressed great affection for her, the infant, and their prospective future together. It is astonishing to consider the audacity of his actions. Furthermore, it is noteworthy that she underwent a termination shortly after this incident, as it was the most optimal decision for mental well-being, given the circumstances she had endured. It is imperative that we refrain from passing judgment on Molly, as she made a decision that was in her best interest.